The first screams didn't come from Earth. They echoed across deep space, encoded in a dying colony's final transmission. 17 seconds of static-laced terror, then silence. Humanity had always wondered if it was alone. That question was answered not with words, but with fire. Arya Hale stood on the upper deck of the Skirich Orbital Command, eyes fixed on the impossible, 3 alien ships blotting out the stars. Smooth, obsidian things, pulsing with internal light, like something alive. She didn't blink. She couldn't afford to. "Ma'am, we're getting no response from any of the outer defense satellites. Echo grids down." Lieutenant Karu's voice cracked with disbelief. "How many bodies out there?" Arya asked, voice flat, clipped, controlled. "Unknown. Best guess 3 million just in Lunar Station. Burned through the shields like tissue." Arya clenched her jaw. Her mind raced, not with panic, but calculations. Contingency Omega Red was now in effect. She had pushed for it in every defense meeting, been laughed off the floor for it. No one wanted to believe the worst until it came calling with claws. She turned to Karu. "Send the signal. Global broadcast. Level 7. Do it now." "Yes, Commander." The earth below, blue and shining in its fragile beauty, began to shimmer as alien fire rained down. Beijing disappeared in a heartbeat, followed by Cairo, then Buenos Aires. The ships didn't fire beams or missiles. They simply released shimmering waves of corrosive energy that melted steel, stone, and bone alike. 3 billion gone in 90 days. The invaders didn't speak. No demands. No ultimatums. They weren't conquerors. They were exterminators. Arya barely slept. Her son, Eli, had been on one of the coastal evacuation barges. She never found the wreckage, just drift data. He might be alive. Or ash. She chose not to ask. There was no time for grief. Only war. World governments collapsed within weeks. Panic gave way to primal fear. Humanity split. Some fled to the Martian colonies, others burrowed deep beneath the earth. And then there were those like Arya. Those who refused to run. They gathered in what was left of Iceland, the magnetic storms and volcanic interference, making it hard for the aliens to track. The land became a fortress of frozen iron and fury. A fractured coalition of scientists, soldiers, and survivors coalesced into Project Requiem, Earth's last whisper of organized resistance. Arya presided over it like a storm. In one of the geothermal labs beneath the northern ridge, she stood over a hollowed table, scattered with maps and sensor readouts. Dr. Voss, a man who hadn't seen the sun in a year, leaned over beside her. "They don't just kill. They rewrite biology. Terraform through obliteration." "We've seen it," she replied. "No. You've seen the surface effect. What you haven't seen is what's happening to the atmosphere. They're seeding it, remaking it into something that sustains only them. Earth will die screaming." She didn't flinch. "Then we stop them before she finishes the scream." "Commander, we can't match their tech. Their ships are semi-organic. Their weapons." "I don't want to match them, Doctor," she cut in. "I want to become something worse." There it was. The seed. The moral compromise, blooming like a dark flower. Project Requiem wasn't just a resistance. It was a crucible. Deep beneath the Arctic shelf, they had been building the answer, something monstrous, something human only in origin. If the enemy was rewriting the planet, then Earth would rewrite her children. Still, Arya hadn't made the final call. Not yet. Not until she was sure there was no other path. She stared at the cracked photo of her son in her glove compartment. The edges were curling. The ink was bleeding. Her hand tightened around it. An alarm flared red. Unidentified contact. "Breach. Sector 12, a voice called over the intercom. Already? They found us." Voss's voice trembled. "Seal the labs," Arya snapped. "Deploy internal defenses. Get me visual." A grainy feed snapped to life. One of the alien scouts moved through the snow like a shadow, limbs too long, head crowned with translucent spines. It wasn't armored. It didn't need to be. It exuded death like heat. "They're probing." Testing us, Arya murmured. No more hiding. What are you going to do? She turned to Voss. Her eyes were twin embers in the dark. I'm going to open the vault. That sentence changed everything. Even Voss, the cold-blooded architect of synthetic genetics, visibly recoiled. You don't know if they're controllable. They're not. That's the point. Within minutes, Arya stood before a sealed chambered door 10 stories tall. Frost crawled along its surface, and behind it something moved. Slow, patient, waiting. Karoo met her there, armored and trembling. We swore we'd only use them if we had no other choice. I'm not choosing, she replied. I'm accepting the world that chose for me. She input the code. Hissing steam. Grinding steel. The door slid open. Inside, 3 forms unfurled like serpents waking from dreams. Not alien. Not human. Something between. They moved with a grace that broke physics, and when they spoke, it wasn't in words but emotion, pain, loyalty, hunger. The largest, twice her height, skin mottled with carbon filaments, stepped forward. Arya looked up at it unflinching. We gave you Earth's worst nightmares, she said. Now we ask you to return the favor. It tilted its head, then nodded. Above them, the alien scout paused mid-scan, as if sensing something ancient stirring beneath the ice. A shadow fell across it. A growl, not mechanical, not natural, rolled through the mountains. The silence was broken, and Earth was no longer defenseless. The first time Dredge opened his eyes, the world flinched. His body was a patchwork of engineered muscle, adaptive armor, and residual humanity. His mind, a battlefield of instinct and programming, processed information in bursts, each thought tinged with old memories he didn't ask for. He knew 3 things. He had been human once, he had died, and now he existed only to kill the invaders who thought Earth would break. Arya stood behind the blast glass as the containment bay's lights shifted from red to white. She studied the figure before her, 7 feet tall, skin like obsidian mesh, with heat signatures pulsing across his chest like a heart gone rogue. Despite everything, despite the darkness that came with his resurrection, he bowed his head at the sight of her. Designation? She asked through the intercom. His voice, rough as gravel scraping steel, filled the chamber. Dredge. Confirmed. Mission? Her fingers twitched, hesitation threatening to weaken her resolve. But hesitation got people killed. She leaned forward. The aliens found us. You're being deployed. A faint hum filled the room. It wasn't a sound made by a machine, it was coming from Dredge himself. Anticipation. Hunger. Beside Arya, Karoo watched with tight jaws. He's stable now, but the mental degradation curve is steep. These things weren't meant for long-term command. They're weapons, not soldiers. Then we point them and pull the trigger before they rust. There were 3 of them. Dredge was the prototype. The others, codenamed Wraith and Bastion, had been grown later, each forged from the DNA of soldiers who had died in the first wave. Their bodies weren't born. They were built in a vat of gene-stitched nightmares, then hardened in zero-gravity combat simulations too lethal for baseline humans. Wraith was a whisper in motion, light-bending, cloaking, nanite tendrils instead of limbs, no visible mouth. Bastion, in contrast, was a tank on 2 legs, plated in smart ceramic armor and powered by a fusion core small enough to power a city block. And all of them answered to Arya Hale. The mission was surgical. Alien scouts had reactivated a defunct orbital uplink in the Alps. If they succeeded in re-establishing long-range scan relays, the hidden bunkers across Earth would be mapped, and Requiem would be torn apart before their counterstrike ever began. That could not happen. Arya watched as the trio loaded into the drop capsule. The walls were lined with restraints, more for the world's safety than theirs. Karoo murmured, "You think they even understand what they are?" "I don't need them to understand," Arya replied. "I need them to win." The drop was a controlled descent into madness. At terminal velocity, the capsule punched through the Swiss cloud layer like a meteor. Atmosphere peeled away. Shock dampeners groaned. At 2,000 feet, the shell cracked open, and the monsters were loosed upon the world. Dredge landed in a crater of pulverized earth, already in motion before the dust settled. Wraith detached mid-fall, vanishing before she hit the ground. Bastion landed like an artillery strike, his arrival triggering a small avalanche. The alien encampment was nestled in a dead valley, machines humming with language too complex for human linguists to decipher. Their structures looked grown, not built, spires of bone-white alloy coiled around pulsating cores. Dredge charged, without hesitation. The first alien didn't have time to react. Dredge's claws, retractable carbon razors, ripped through its torso, black ichor sizzling as it hit snow. Another swung a gravity weapon, only for Bastion to take the blow and return it tenfold, slamming the creature into the ground so hard it cratered. Wraith moved between shadows, slicing through command nodes, disrupting communication. She didn't kill for the sake of death. She killed for precision, for silence, for maximum disruption. Within 7 minutes, the entire scout nest was destroyed. Dredge stood at the center of it all, steaming with alien blood, his breath visible in the frozen air. For a moment, there was no movement, no sound, just the heavy presence of power reclaimed. Then his comm crackled. Dredge, status report. Aria's voice came through. He turned to a scorched spire, placing one clawed hand on its surface. The structure vibrated under his touch. He didn't speak at first. Instead, he let the comms capture the sound of alien bones cracking beneath his feet. Sight clear. Uplink destroyed. Mission success. Silence answered. Then her voice, quiet, almost reverent. Understood. Return for debrief. We're not done. Back in the command chamber, Karu sat heavily at the console, exhaling. They're terrifying. They're necessary, Arya said, but something in her tone betrayed a crack. We lost 3 billion people because we weren't willing to cross a line. I won't make that mistake again. Karu looked at her, troubled. How long do you think you'll be able to control them? Arya didn't answer right away. She stared at the screen, at the feed still streaming from Dredge's internal cam. He looked out over the valley of ruined alien tech and twitching corpses, like a king returning to a broken throne. I don't control them, she said finally. I lead them. And they follow because I told them the truth. This isn't about survival anymore. It's about revenge. Far above, in orbit around the dying blue planet, an alien command vessel caught the last few seconds of the uplink feed before it was severed. What they saw made them pause. Not soldiers. Not humans. Monsters. Shaped by grief. Sharpened by rage. And the message was clear. Earth wasn't finished. Earth was evolving. The drop into Geneva was different. Not just because of what waited below, but because of what had changed above. For the first time in 2 years, Earth's skies weren't silent. A signal pulsed across the stratosphere, an encoded roar from humanity to its tormentors. It wasn't diplomatic. It wasn't encrypted. It was deliberate. A pulse beat wrapped in static and vengeance. We are coming. Commander Arya Hale stood aboard the Vigilant Dawn, a retrofitted orbital platform held together by stubborn will and half-working reactors. Below them, the ruined husk of Geneva burned with a cold, green fire, alien infrastructure grown like tumors through the city's bones. What had once been a seat of diplomacy now resembled a cathedral of conquest. She turned to Dredge, who crouched in the launch bay, body humming with restrained violence. His eyes glowed faintly, not with malice, but with purpose. Somewhere beneath the titanium lattice and neurogel implants was a soldier who once wrote poetry. Now he was poetry, brutal, unrelenting, and soaked in metaphorical blood. Target is the spire, Arya said, gesturing to the hollowed-out remains of the UN tower, now a living conduit feeding alien data to orbit. You destroy that, we sever their planetary relay grid. Dredge tilted his head, processing the tactical structure, like a predator watching prey patterns. Confirmed, he rasped. Wraith shimmered into visibility beside him, her cloaking field disengaging. Her movements were too smooth to be natural, and yet too intentional to be alien. She said nothing, but nodded once, sharp, deliberate. Bastion stepped forward last, his armored chassis hissing as it compensated for atmospheric pressure shifts. His voice was slower, deeper. "Too much noise in this sky. They'll see us coming." "They're supposed to," Arya replied. "We've been hiding too long. Time to remind them what it costs to look at Earth with hunger." Moments later, the three were launched in staggered intervals. They fell like angels of wrath, silent until the impact. Dredge hit first, landing in the central plaza where statues once stood. Now, roots of alien alloy curled around shattered stone. His landing sent out a shockwave that rippled through the twisted infrastructure. The aliens responded immediately. From the cathedral-like spire emerged 6, maybe 7 guardians, bipedal, their skin shifting through phases of color and density, as if reality itself bent around them. Their weapons weren't guns. They were the weapons. Each movement reshaped the battlefield, twisting gravity, folding space in flashes of impossible geometry. Dredge didn't pause. He launched forward, claws spinning, carving through the first guardian with surgical precision. The creature howled, not in pain, but in defiance, its insides unraveling into strands of quantum plasma. Wraith emerged beside him, landing on one of the guardians from above, embedding nanite-drenched knives into its skull. Bastion charged straight through 2 of them, absorbing hits that would have annihilated tanks. He was built for siege, for endurance, for surviving the impossible and retaliating with more than any enemy could bear. For a moment, it looked like they might falter. One of the aliens let out a harmonic scream that disoriented even Wraith. Dredge stumbled, his neural core flickering with corrupt signals. Bastion's armor warped as reality distorted around him. Then Dredge let go. Not of the mission. Of restraint. He emitted a shriek, a sound dredged up from some ancient part of humanity's soul. It was not tactical. It was not rational. It was war cry and curse, grief and fury distilled. The sound cracked the spire's outer walls. Even the alien tech paused in that instant. And in that heartbeat of hesitation, the monsters of Earth surged. The battle lasted 13 minutes. At the end of it, the plaza was a crater, filled with twitching remnants of unrecognizable geometry. The spire, once a proud needle of living circuitry, collapsed in on itself, its internal systems scrambled by Wraith's viral payload. Dredge stood amid the ruin, dripping with things that had no name, steam rising off his body. He looked up to the orbital camera. Arya watched him. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. She tapped the control panel. "Patch me through to global resistance frequencies." Karu hesitated. All of them. All of them. The feed went live, across Mars relays, ocean bunkers, lunar arcs. Every surviving node of humanity's defiance. "This is Commander Arya Hale. Geneva is ours." She let the silence speak for a beat. "The enemy said we were broken, that we had lost our will, our planet, our right to exist. But what they never understood is that Earth does not beg. Earth does not yield. Earth makes monsters out of men when needed, and those monsters have just taken back one of our cities." Across the stars, in the cold recesses of an alien command vessel, the signal was received. A single word, scrambled, accented, filled with rage, repeated on the looped footage. Geneva. The alien command watched. Calculated. Reassessed. They had believed humanity defeated. Now they believed something worse, that humanity had become unpredictable. Back aboard the Vigilant Dawn, Arya lowered her voice. "Tell them, Earth is coming." And this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a promise.